All right, here we go. Okay, welcome. So hopefully you're able to see me and my screen now and hear my voice. Everything on this side makes me think that that is the case. So welcome again to another stream. So today we're going to be focusing on content and Signagelive. Probably one of the most important features around digital signage in general is content. One of the things that we're going to be focused on is what kind of content versions are out there and what variety of content there is and what you can get started with. And the most interesting thing, I guess, from a content perspective is it can wildly vary depending on what you're looking to do. So some of the things we talk about today, you may not have any interest in whatsoever, and other things you have a lot more interest in. So we'll go through that as we talk about content. The reason that I wanted to do this particular stream is it is imperative to have good content for digital signage. It's they go hand in hand. And one of the things that we get asked the most is, what kind of content can we use? What kind of content should we use? And one of the questions that we always ask, especially when I'm speaking to a customer or a client in any way, is who's going to be looking after that content? Because that can sometimes vary depending on the skill base of the person that's responsible for looking after the content. It may also vary depending on how much time they have to dedicate to that content management. So what we're going to look at today is an overview of every type of content that Signagelive supports, and we'll talk about them in some fair detail, just depending on what you're looking to do, including things like what kind of software can you use to actually achieve that content management. So if you're very new to content, this is a good place to start when it comes to getting started with digital signage and what you're going to need to know. So to start off with, I've got my handy slide deck. So why is content so important? Well, digital signage is only as impactful as the quality of the media that you display. So at Signagelive, we understand that not everyone has access to all of the types of content that is available. So what we've offered and what we've kind of built out is a range of free templates and third-party services and suggestions and recommendations depending on what kind of content you're actually looking to manage. So we'll go through those steps in a moment, but clearly, the key point here is that making content that is rich and engaging is just as important as having the digital signage there in the first place, which is why I wanted to focus on this in one entire session. So what types of content are there out there? We've covered some of these before. We will be going back to some of them again just to make sure that we cover off everything, and we'll be adding in some additional features that we haven't talked about before. But some of the basic ones: images, videos, web pages. Then you get into some more complex IPTV streaming, apps within the marketplace, HDMI inputs, and then finally on top of that, third-party content and what they can bring to the table if maybe you don't have the time or maybe you don't have the resources to go and collate a huge, vast amount of information that is out there already. So starting with images, very basic. Obviously, images is something that we deal with on a daily basis when it comes to digital signage. It's a staple content type. Some of you may already have the ability to create your own content using some of the services that I've put below there. So Photoshop, Canva, GIMP is a free photo creation tool, so no cost at all. It just allows you to do simple basic things like layering different zones of content on top of each other, rasterizing them and then saving them as a JPEG or a PNG image for you to then upload and use in your digital signage. Things like adding layers of text on there as well. So it's all dependent on how in-depth you want to get with your images. Obviously, on the highest end of the scale, you'll have people who know how to use Photoshop and know how to create their own content, and they have their own brand styling and brand guidelines, and all of that is built in to the very nature of what they do. And then there are people on the other side of it who maybe are only looking to manage 2 or 3 screens, and they just don't have the resources or the time or the bandwidth to go and create their own content to such a degree. So things like Canva and GIMP are a nice, simple way of creating that content at either a budget or just time saving. So images are obviously a huge feature when it comes to digital signage, but that's not the only one. The second one, obviously almost as important, in fact, if not more so important, is videos. So the benefit of videos in comparison to static images, obviously apart from the obvious with it being in motion, is that movement and dynamic movement allows increased viewership and retention rate. So with moving images on the screen, even if it's just slight movement, can really improve how often someone is looking at a screen and how long they're looking at the screen for, which obviously is the intention to make sure the information that you're trying to send, whether it be menu boards or health and safety information or recommendations or anything like that, the longer someone's looking at the screen, the more engaged they are, the more they understand about what it is you're selling or your product or your service or whatever it may be. So I've added a couple on there. You've got Final Cut on the very left-hand side there, Final Cut being a Apple product. There is also iMovie, so if you've got an Apple product already or a Mac, iMovie, I believe it's free, included in their service. Premiere Pro, something that I'm very familiar with. This allows you to create pretty much any video content you want. Interestingly, with the Adobe family, it's pretty much, a whole range. You'll see a few of these with Photoshop and Premiere Pro, obviously all coming from Adobe at a fairly high cost in terms of some of the free services, but obviously these are industry standard softwares for doing anything from producing a full movie to adverts on TV to, just your regular kind of content that you may want to show. And you can see on the right hand side is kind of a preview. So it depends on how much you want to dive in that. Do you want to be able to create your own videos? Do you not? Now within Signagelive, obviously you can record a video just on your phone and then have that display straight on the screen. But there's nothing stopping you from doing that, but it depends on how far in depth you want to get to that. There'll be some other services we'll talk about in a moment which will allow you to do some of these things without having some of the skill set or the knowledge base, and we'll kind of come to that later on. But videos are an important part of digital signage because it adds motion, it adds engagement, it adds changing of content and subjects or whatever it might be that you're actually trying to engage people with. One of the other things just in terms of video is not a huge amount of motion needs to be put in place. You don't need to go out and film a whole range of things. Just, for a menu, for example, it could just be there's a bit of steam coming off of a cup of tea or whatever it might be. It could be anything. Almost product placement there. So video is very important, and obviously we've now covered the two bases, which image and video make up a huge portion of digital signage as a whole. So as we start to go away from that, we can start talking about something that's a little bit more unique, such as URLs or web pages. Now, allowing you to show web pages and URLs on the screen gives you the benefit of having data update automatically. So if there's a website that you're already using, if it's your homepage for your website which already has up-to-date information, or you wanted to create a website or web page specifically designed with some data that you want to display, all of that can then be put into digital signage, put into Signagelive in full screen or in the zone of a screen and display that data and updates automatically. We have some in the marketplace, which we'll talk about in a moment, such as Power BI and Gecko Board, and a whole range of different services like that, where they are already dealing with sales data that you can then display on the screen automatically. But anything that is a web page will work. So sales data is one example, but it could be anything. It could be scores or schedules or whatever it might be. If you already have that content existing, having a URL display is of benefit. And one of the other benefits of that is you're not having to go into Signagelive to update that content regularly. It will do that on its own. You can just leave that static and it will update automatically for you. So URLs, a very important piece, and that kind of integrates with a lot of the apps that we have in the Signagelive marketplace, which we'll walk you through in a moment as well. IPTV stream. IPTV stream is becoming more and more popular. And for those of you that don't know what IPTV streaming is, it basically allows you to live stream content to the displays. I've got an example here, a couple of examples down there, such as XSplit or SLOBS, which is actually what I'm using to stream today. That could go through IBM Cloud Video or YouTube or Vimeo or any other kind of video hosted service, or one that you're running yourself or one that you request to be built out, and then have that delivered to the screen. Now, the left-hand side portion of that allows you all of the control. So as I have now me in the corner doing a picture-on-picture, and then you've got your large scale in the background. That's what those services do, and then they're getting ingested by IBM or YouTube or Vimeo, and then that stream that gets presented can be picked up and delivered by the screen. Now, this is something that Signagelive have heard more and more about. We definitely get more and more requests on live streaming. One of the things that we can actually do to integrate with this, which will create a fully fledged functionality for you, would be to include that into something like a web trigger. So, for example, what the web trigger can do is allow a group of screens to turn to a piece of content all at the same time. So to give you a good example of what we often get asked for is, let's say someone has an announcement or a CEO presentation on a weekly basis that they want to deliver to a broad range of screens. Well, what we can actually do is say, well, that's great. They can use their XSplit or their SLOBS or whatever it is they're using to actually create the stream and ingest it into one of the services that they want to, and then have that delivered to screen. But what Signagelive will also do is create a trigger. So when you hit a physical button or a digital button, then your screens convert over to display your IPTV stream for a period of time until that presenter is finished doing what they're doing, and then hit another button to stop and return back to your digital signage. So we're talking about some more kind of inclusive ways of having communication. Obviously right now, communication more important than anything. There is a logo up in there called PCI Express Limited. They actually do some IPTV streaming which is focused on channels. So one of the other questions that we also get is, I want to show live TV, but I don't have a set-top box, or I don't have a physical box on each screen that I can get a live TV feed into. Or what PCI Express do is actually take that feed and turn it into an IPTV stream for you for a set amount of devices that you can deliver it to. So IPTV predominantly becoming more and more popular now, especially when we're looking at communication on a regular basis. So a really key piece. But again, this isn't necessarily for everyone. Just a very interesting piece of content that has a lot of different variety of use out there in the market right now. Can't go into content without talking about our marketplace apps. We have a range of free apps built into the platform. We've gone through this in a previous stream in terms of every single application, but I will just go over some of the highlights there. Clocks, weather, calendar integration, which will connect automatically to either Google Calendars or Office 365. Menu board designs that will have you the ability to go and update the pricing or the itemized elements on the menu boards, and there's some more of these that will be coming shortly as well. Same with notice boards, and we've mentioned the Gecko and the Power BI. YouTube apps, Grow, and News as well. A whole range of apps, and that is forever building. And we can go over actually to the Signagelive website and have a look at the marketplace in a minute, because we've actually started adding some additional features which are more event-based. So things that are popular around the world, whether it be religious events or big events that are coming, and they can be big and small. So things like Christmas, birthdays, Mother's Day, as we spoke about last week, and some more regional things like D-Day or the ending of Ramadan, which is coming up soon as well. So really trying to spread it out to make it as broad and as vast as possible. The marketplace is free. Again, no additional cost to that within the Signagelive license, and it's definitely our way of working with you in terms of making content as easy to access and as, basically filling out your digital signage as quickly as possible with all the content that you want to see. And you can obviously mix and match that with the images and the videos that we were talking about earlier. So that's the marketplace. HDMI input. So on a selection of devices, some of them have a HDMI input inbuilt to them already. Now, if you don't already know how Signagelive works in terms of hardware, there are two main hardware types. One which is SoC, or system on chip, which basically means you've got your TV with everything built into that screen to do digital signage. That's not necessarily an off-the-shelf screen that you could go and pick up from Best Buy. They tend to be more commercial grade products, but they have all of that hardware built into them. Then you have a standalone device or a player, and there's a range of those out there. Now, some of those standalone devices will have a HDMI input into them. The SoCs, or the system on chips that have a HDMI input, can be used all kind of off the shelf. So it depends on what you're looking to do. But as easy as it sounds, it basically allows you to put in a set-top box or some kind of device into that HDMI input one, and then we can use that as content. So just as we would do with an image or a video, we can say we'd like to flick over to our content, which is actually live TV for either a period of time or in the zone of a screen, as I've kind of demonstrated on this piece of artwork here. And it all just comes down to what your preference is. But the benefit, obviously, of using HDMI input is it's automatic. It's content already pre-made for you. It's live. It could be event coverage, something that's current or relevant. It could be showing, news or whatever you want to. And obviously, you can still use that set-top box. So if you wanted to change channels through it, all the possibilities are there as well. I wanted to add that one because HDMI input is often required, and it depends on whether you want to do something like this, which is one-to-one, i.e. you have one top box, one screen, and it goes through that. Or you wanted to go through the IPTV streaming, such as the PCI Express that I mentioned a moment ago, where you have a one-to-many or a one feed from live TV that can go to many screens at the same time. And that will depend on what your preferences are, what your requirements are, what your budget is. There'll be a few pieces there that we can talk about with you in terms of understanding your content and how you want to deliver it. The third one, the final one that I wanted to focus on today, and we're going to go over and see some of these websites in a minute just to see what the differences are, is third-party content. Now, we have tested a range of different third parties out there in the field. We know some of them that we've listed down here that we're comfortable with, and we know that they work well with the Signagelive platform, and we've worked alongside them, such as Screenfeed, SceneSpire, SodaClick, Post to My Wall, and there are a range of other ones as well. The benefit of the third-party content is they will do the content updates for you. They will also potentially give you a platform to create content nice and simply with a range of pre-built layouts and templates and things that you can go and create your images or videos that we spoke about earlier. Obviously, there's normally an additional charge for the third-party content, but that gives you the ability to start picking through their library and creating content in the way that you want to. So if you don't want to go down the route of buying a Photoshop license or Premiere Pro license, then this may actually be a simpler, more user-friendly way of making that content. And all of these services that we've got on the screen here offer something slightly differently. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to actually walk you through them and just give you a bit of a highlight of where each of them have their main benefits and strengths. I won't go too far in depth, so I'll obviously, any questions that you may have on these, feel free to go over to their websites and investigate them yourselves. But all of these can be ingested into Signagelive as a piece of content and still be managed just like an image or a video would be in terms of scheduling, putting it into a playlist, putting it into a rotation. That's the real beauty of services like these. So we're going to go over here to the first one, which is SodaClick. I know the guys down at SodaClick very well. They have made a very simple way to create content. So it houses a whole host of free templates and images and videos you can go and get, and then you can simply go and layer on your text or your imagery or small video slides, like we're talking about steam coming off of the cup of coffee, or burgers with some motion in the background, whatever it might be, and then creating that content and exporting it to Signagelive. So that's where SodaClick come in, and it just gives you this tool or template to go and create your content, but it has a library of free built images already. So things like images of a burger or a cup of coffee or anything like that. So you don't have to go and get a professional photographer. You can just utilize their library. You've got Screenfeed. Screenfeed actually have a range of content in terms of pulling from feeds such as social media, traffic, weather. There's other elements as well, but obviously focusing on one kind of benefit of each of these services, so you've got a bit of a flavor of what's out there. So if you're saying, well, actually I'd like to show traffic information, currently the Signagelive marketplace doesn't have that function. There are some on here that Signagelive do have, like weather, but there's a lot of range of different kind of content types and design types, so it'll be up to you which one is of preference to you. So within Screenfeed, you can go in and say, actually, I'd like to pull my Twitter feed. I want it to have this kind of background. I want to get rid of images, or I want to include this certain text, package that up and then send that to Signagelive. And again, that will just go away and automate that feed for you. So Screenfeed, great, a range of different packages on there that you can utilize from them and ingest into Signagelive. Scenespire. So Scenespire have the capability of creating infotainment fields or social media engagement fields. They have really focused in on how to elaborate those services. So for example, LinkedIn, Facebook for work, Instagram, Twitter, a whole range of these services that you can pull in. But what they also allow you to do is really drill down as to what content do you want visible. You can search for key search terms such as, let's say a swear word. You don't want to have that swear word appear. You want to make sure you've got a nice safe stream, so you can manage that in the back end or highlight certain words that will not appear, such as competitor words. What you can also do within there is actually choose whether you want that to be automated or you want some of the images to turn up as a holding bay, and then you can go and approve the content that you want to see delivered on the screen. So Scenespire really focused in on making sure that content is as in-depth as possible and make sure you understand what you're letting out to your audience. It's great for mass communication where your key focus is to make sure there's nothing offensive that gets released, because obviously social media and things like that do have their own pitfalls. So that's where Scenespire really kind of focus in. And there is other elements, as I said, as we go through these partners in terms of what they do. But I'm just trying to pick out something that's specifically a unique point for them. The last one on there, Poster My Wall. So they have a range of content, pre-built posters, graphics, designs that are already designed. So you can either just go and pick a template straight away and say, hey, I want to use this. I want to change the word to my business name, and off you go. Or alternatively, actually, I'm going to start picking this apart a little bit, and I'm going to add different layers of content on top of that and start creating the content that I want to see on the screen. Now, this is, again, kind of similar in the way that it comes to creating your own images, but it's all based around having that content already pre-made for you. So if you really don't have time, or you don't have the technical or the artistic expertise to go and create this content, it's a great option for you just to go and say, I love the look of this, I'm going to pick it apart, put my own logo, put my own text in there, and the rest will be automated. So we've gone over 4 of, I think, kind of our main partners in terms of content, and there are other ones out there, as I said, so I don't feel like this is the end of the road when it comes to content. We've talked about quite a few different pieces of content, and one of the things I will go back into just as we take a step back into this presentation here is the marketplace. As I mentioned, there is a range of free content built within Signagelive, and where we start to excel when it comes to all of the different content varieties out there is we will do things bespoke as well. So if you say to us, we have this data feed, we have something in our store that we want to display, whether that be POS data, whether it be, a corporate announcement board, or anything where you've got a whole host of data that you want to update and automatically put into your digital signage, we can build that for you, or someone else can build that for you. We're not kind of holding the marketplace at ransom. Anyone can go in there and do what they want to in terms of developing their own apps, which, by the way, for anyone who watches this, which does have kind of a HTML5 background, it's all developed as a WGT file, which is a HTML5 packaged widget. So a lot of these things are based in HTML5, which means it's in essence, it's a website, but the packaging allows it to continue running offline. It allows you to store all of that data locally, so it continues to run offline without any hesitation, and just gives you a lot of granular control. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about in content. And I kind of sat down this morning and was trying to decide what I was going to do in this presentation in terms of what content's out there. I'm sure there's probably a few pieces that I haven't touched upon specifically, but I think when we go back to the beginning of the slides here, these are the key features, and there'll be more coming in, and we'll obviously continue to expand and grow. And as new pieces of content come in that become popular, we'll look to utilize them and put them within Signagelive. But from start to finish here, you have a range of different ways of approaching content, whether you want to be self-involved, create the content yourself, and actually have a hand in delivering and creating that content. Or on the complete other end of the scale, you could make a whole digital signage solution where you don't have to create any content yourself. You could have third-party content input, HDMI input, apps, IPTV streams, and web pages all create your digital signage experience, which in essence means you don't have to do anything with your digital signage management whatsoever in terms of content. But the choice is yours. And obviously, I think more on a regular scale, we see people getting involved in creating their own content on a regular basis. So I'm going to put the screen on pause for a minute. I'm just going to go into the marketplace, pick out a few pieces for you to just have a look at. So we've got a visual of what some of these look like within the marketplace. Whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to put it onto the Q&A section. So if you do have any questions, perfect time to drop them in now. And we'll be back in just 2 seconds to go have a look at that. So as I mentioned a moment ago, I've taken us into the marketplace here so we can have a bit of a brief overview of some of these apps that I've mentioned within the platform. So Calendar is one of the kind of biggest ones when it comes to integrating data. So I wanted to show you this just to show you an example of what can be done. There's a whole range of new designs actually on their way into the marketplace shortly, but this is an example of one where you can see the meeting room information. All of these work with touchscreen as well. So if you have, there's a range of them on here that will work with touchscreen devices. So if you want to be able to go up and book rooms whilst you're on location, you can do. There's also different versions with multiple rooms as well. But again, it's something that will display on your screen that's not active. There's no additional management of that content, but it will update itself automatically with the room booking features. We obviously have some of the other ones I wanted to mention here. News, so things that will connect into different news applications. There's a whole range of different news providers out there that will go and grab that news information regularly. And you also have the choice within these news applications, such as, let's say, CNN, as to what kind of feed would you like to add. So is it going to be the entertainment or the sports or the kind of general news? A whole different host of options on there as well. The other ones that I wanted to mention we're talking about is events, which, as I said, we've started building out just recently. So we've got the other events, we've got national holidays, and these will keep being built up as well throughout the year for you to go and grab on event-based content. And that's really just to focus in on making sure that there is a whole range of content on here, and we know that content changes dependent on large events throughout the year. So whether it be, if it's digital signage such as a menu board, that might not be relevant. But when you're talking about corporate communication or just communication out to people on site, then this might be a beneficial feature and functionality for you. Clock and weather, as we covered before, but in essence, it's just the ability to show time and weather on the screen and have that automatically update. And especially for things like weather, that will take the weather from where the location of the device is. So if you are managing devices over multiple locations or different time zones, for example, that will update itself automatically. The other one that I just wanted to mention here as we kind of wrap up is menu boards. And the reason I wanted to mention this because when we're talking about content, a lot of the time it's, I have a menu, I want to display my content, so I can go and find my menu design that I want here. We've got a whole host of content that we've made that's free within the marketplace. We're bringing some new ones in the kind of foreseeable future as well. The benefit of these allows you to go in and change the text within that app. Now that could be replaced with actually just POS data or any kind of data integration. But I wanted to show you this because it's kind of pivotal to the way that we manage the content and the way that you can start becoming slightly more hands-off from your content, even though the content is up to date. So I'm just going to click and drag this over, double click on that item, and then we can go in and edit the properties within the app itself. So things like the item name, the item price, and all of the different text differences such as item font size, text color, title. So it just gives you that ability to be as flexible as possible. That's more or less everything that I wanted to show you through today. Hopefully, especially if you haven't been through digital signage at all and you're looking at the content and you're thinking about how you want to get started with content, this should give you a really good base to understand all of the different content types out there. There is one that I haven't actually mentioned that I will mention very, very briefly, which is RSS or media RSS feeds. And I should have added this into the slideshow, but I didn't. But RSS is in essence a text ticker or rotation of text that you see. You see them everywhere on the bottom of the screen that rotate around, and that's updating from a source as well, whether it be from an external source or one that you're looking after yourself. There's also the ability to actually manage an RSS feed within Signagelive if you choose to enable that. And there's a whole host of different options when it comes to delivering that content out on the screen. Back to my main point though, but this is really just about delivering content in the way that you want to and how much time you want to invest in that, whether it's a lot or whether it's a little, whether it's a team of people, whether it's an individual, or whether it's someone that only has 5 minutes a week or month to go and update that content. There is an answer and a solution out there for you. It just depends on which one's going to be best for you. Hopefully, if you've never kind of looked into the content side of digital signage before, this will help you out. This will also be archived and recorded, so you can go and watch this video back or send it to a friend or, offer it to someone who's looking at content digital signage for the first time or looking at what content they're looking to deliver. We're going to go into a pause now where we go into a Q&A. If there are any questions, then please ask them now and I will make sure we answer them. And we'll kind of wrap up at the end of the call here at the past, unless there have been any other questions and we need to extend, which we absolutely can do as well. Aside from that, thank you very much for joining me again, and we'll see you again on Thursday next week, 3 p.m. BST. If you have any other questions or want to speak to us directly about content and digital signage, feel free to visit signagelive.com, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks very much.